right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at the Volume. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. We're getting a triple dose of Hoops Tonight. I am going to be breaking down today during the day. I watched some of the games that I missed yesterday. We're going to hit two of those in this video. Zion Williamson's return with the New Orleans Pelicans and a big season opening win over the Memphis Grizzlies. And then the second half is going to be Donovan Mitchell and his game winner over the Brooklyn Nets in Brooklyn to start the season. The opening week of the NBA season is crazy. It's almost impossible for me to hit all the teams, but I do want to go hard this week to try to hit as many as possible before we kind of relax into our groove over the course of the rest of the regular season. So we've got Pels, Grizzlies, and Cavs, Nets in this video. We're going to be breaking down the Bucks-Sixers game on TNT later on tonight. And then in the late portion of the evening, Kevin Durant versus LeBron James in the regular season for the first time since 2018. We're going to be hitting that game. I should say they played in the finals in 2018 as well. But we're going to be hitting that game in the late portion tonight. So 3 episodes of Hoops tonight. And then tomorrow, we're going to be covering the Friday night slate on Saturday morning. So keep an eye on the feeds on Saturday morning as well. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel. It would mean a lot to me if you guys took a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget about our social media feeds on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, where we're going to be posting video content and show announcements over the course of the year. Our podcast feed, wherever you get podcasts under Hoops Tonight. And then I need more mailbag questions. Keep dropping those in the YouTube comments. All right, let's talk some basketball. So I want to focus on, in this Pelicans-Grizzlies game, the most of the damage got done there in the second quarter. Again, when I look at game reactions, I always look at like pivotal stretches. There are always these stretches of a game where teams are kind of ebbing and flowing with energy and effort, right? So there's kind of like a natural flow to a game, but there's usually a key stretch where things are determined, right? Like, for instance, when we talk Cavs Nets later, it was a late Cleveland Cavaliers run after going down by 6 points or whatever with 4 minutes left, right? In this game, the Grizzlies had an 8-point lead in the early second quarter. Next thing you know, you look up and the Pelicans are up 15. And then the rest of the game, it kind of goes back and forth, right? Like the Grizzlies starters come back into the game in the middle of the second quarter. They kind of, sort of go on a run and get it back to 5. But then like the Pelican starters, they reassert themselves and get the lead back up, and then they kind of just take control of the rest of the game. And so there's all these little runs, but it's the defining runs that end up determining the game. And the defining run in this particular game was in the early second quarter when the Pelicans go on a 27-4 run against the Grizzlies bench group before they kind of stiff-arm them the rest of the game. And I thought it was the lineup construction that was interesting. And this is something that the Grizzlies are going to have to keep an eye on over the course of this season because they didn't really stagger Marcus Smart and Desmond Bane with this group. They just went with Derrick Rose, Luke Kennard, Zion Williams, David Roddy, and Jaren Jackson. And all those guys kind of have unique skills, right? Like Jaren Jackson was blocking a million shots yesterday, got Zion several times, obviously a great defensive player. David Roddy, backup wing, stocky player that can defend some bigger, stronger wings, has some offensive skill. You know, Zion Williams, a really interesting wing. I was impressed by Zion Williams in some of the contests he had on Brandon Ingram. Brandon was making shots in his face, but I thought that his contests were a great indication of his potential as a wing defender. The dude just has arms that go on forever, right? Luke Kennard's a great shooter, and Derrick Rose in his prime was a great guard, and in his late prime, a solid backup guard. But at this point in time, if you look at that list, like, who's the guy who's going to create great shots for your team, right? Like, Derrick Rose isn't a guy that's going to pick you apart in pick and roll at this phase in his career. Luke Kennard needs to be set up, right? Zion Williams right now struggling spot-up shooting and things like that. David Roddy, not a top-tier offensive player. And Jaren Jackson can do some matchup attacking when the floor is spaced for him, but when you put him in a situation where there's not a lot of offensive skill around him, he can kind of be a bull in a china shop and not succeed there. So, like, I'm not surprised at all that they went an extended stretch of the game with that lineup where they couldn't score. Like, that's something that's going to happen, and it's going to be something they have to look at in the future. Like, Desmond Bane was fantastic in this game. At 30-something points and hit a bunch of jump shots, hit some pull-up jump shots as well. He's kind of adding that to his game over the course of the last couple of years. But, you know, without Ja Morant in the picture, it's going to be more important to kind of like create lineups that have the requisite amount of offensive firepower to succeed, right? And that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Like, I mean, Steven Adams, Apparently, I don't really fully understand the injury, but there's some injury going on with his knee. It's something having to do with a specific ligament in his knee that didn't heal properly, and apparently he's going to be out for the rest of the season. And the reality is like Steven Adams is not some deeply valuable playoff player, obviously, with his limitations when teams start to scout and space you out, right? But during the regular season, he's deeply valuable. He's one of the best rebounders in the league, and it kind of turns them into a really physically imposing team, and they can win games like that. But when you remove Steven Adams from the equation, it kind of is a big drop-off to Xavier Tillman, who brings other things to the table. Like, I actually thought Xavier Tillman was a very valuable playoff player last year because of his ability to kind of sort of guard LeBron okay over the course of games, right? And he could also shoot the ball from the perimeter a little bit. So, like, Xavier Tillman might be a better playoff option than Steven Adams, but during the regular season, Steven Adams is a better player. And without him, they lose that physical imposing edge, right? They got out-rebounded 52-37 in this game, only grabbed 45% of available rebounds. And so in that circumstance, especially with Brandon Clark out of the picture too, for the time being, you're going to need shot creation more than ever. So like in recent seasons, you could get away with Ja Morant being out for a long time, and it wasn't that big of a deal. I was under the impression Steven Adams was going to be ready to go this season. He's going to be missing the entire season. So now all of a sudden, Ja Morant becomes incredibly important. And during the 25-game stretch when Ja Morant's out, they're going to have to be really careful with the way they structure their lineups to keep enough offensive firepower on the floor. Now, Zion Williamson made his much-anticipated return from the injury that took him out of the end of last season. Struggled early in the game. The Grizzlies put Xavier Tillman on him, and Zion was able to beat Xavier Tillman off the dribble, but Jaren Jackson Jr. was basically ignoring Jonas Valanciunas and just hanging out underneath the basket waiting for him there. And then they would kind of like rotate and bring the low man over as well, and then they were pre-rotating to the corner to take away that corner skip pass that Zion Williamson likes to make, and he kind of was forcing the action a little bit. He was driving into traffic and throwing junk up. He got blocked 5 times in this game, but he did settle down in the second quarter. He had a really nice sequence at the end of the second quarter where he dunked just all over Jaren Jackson, and then on the very next possession got a backdoor lob dunk from half court from Brandon Ingram. The dunk on Jaren Jackson was an interesting action because it was an inverted ball screen, right? So like Zion has the ball, Xavier Tillman's guarding him. He brings Luke Kennard into the action in a small, essentially bringing a guard into the screen, right? Now here's the thing. Solid screen on Xavier Tillman. Xavier Tillman's a big guy. He doesn't know how to navigate screens, right? And then Luke Kennard just has no chance in hell at stopping Zion Williamson with a hard crossover dribble right after he gets over the ball screen. So he just toasts Luke Kennard. Jaren Jackson's in help, but when you have Zion Williamson coming downhill with like essentially a head of steam, there's just no chance for you to stop him at the rim. He dunks all over Jaren Jackson, catches that lob on the next possession. That was part of the stretch of the game at the end of the second quarter where the Pelicans starters kind of reasserted themselves after the Grizzlies starters came in and kind of sort of calmed things down a little bit. Super well-rounded production from the Pelicans. All 5 starters in double figures. They got an efficient 24 out of CJ McCollum. He's looked really good so far through camp to this point. An efficient 23 out of Zion Williamson. Brandon Ingram was really the only guy who struggled. He missed all 3 of his threes, and he had 5 turnovers in this game. Matt Ryan had a nice shift in that second quarter. Laker legend Matt Ryan, who hit the famous shot in the corner that beat the Pelicans last year at the beginning of the year, if you guys remember. Pelicans fans certainly do. Gave me some Duncan Robinson vibes with that second quarter run, not just because of the threes that he hit, because he came out gunning and he hit a few threes there at the start of the second quarter, but he also was doing some nice work putting the ball on the floor when he was getting pursued. He had an assist to Herb Jones on an action like this. Like again, like Duncan Robinson kind of added to this to his game last year, and it was a deeply impactful part of his offensive production for the Heat. But like when guys are chasing you that chaotically, if you can put the ball on the floor once or twice after coming off of those wide pin downs and make a play, that goes a long way to increasing your impact beyond what your actual ability to make shots is. And he had an assist to Herb Jones on a play like that in that second quarter run. Defense was good. They held the Grizzlies to 100 points per 100 possessions. They just have a lot of length and athleticism and rotation, and it helps them on the glass as well. It was a great rebounding night for them. Again, on that Grizzlies front, Desmond Bane looks great. Deserves every penny of his new contract. Hit 6 jump shots in this game. 2 pull-up jump shots, including like a deep pullback dribble 3 from like 27 feet and pick and roll at the top of the key. Made some really nice passes in his two-man game action. But at the end of the day, without him on the floor, they're struggling with shot creation, so they might have to consider staggering him a little bit more with Smart and not leave those lineups to Kennard and Derrick Rose in the big picture. NBA fans, the wait is over. Basketball is back, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is celebrating with an unbeatable offer. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for throwing down $5 on the NBA. Win or lose, it doesn't matter. You'll start the season with an instant dub. And with DraftKings parlays, everyone's got a shot at an even bigger basketball win. String together multiple bets from the same game or build your parlay across multiple games for a shot at making your payday even sweeter. Basketball's more fun when you're in on the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets instantly for betting just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code HOOPS. The crown is yours. All right, moving on to Cavs Nets. So very different type of game. This one kind of came down to crunch time. The Nets went up 111 to 105 with a minute and 24 seconds left. It was a pick and roll with Mikal Bridges and a kick out pass to Royce O'Neal in the corner that put him up 108, 105, and then 3 free throws from there that got him up to 111, 105. But Cavs get the ball, minute 24 left. Donovan Mitchell gets Nick Claxton on a switch. Again, that's the thing that the Nets are going to do that kind of stagnate you on the defensive end of the floor is they're going to switch a lot, even with Claxton, who's a very good perimeter defender. And Donovan Mitchell just hits him with that patented hard pullback dribble into a pull-up jump shot, makes it 111, 107. On the next possession, the Nets did made a lot of attempts to attack Max Strus in isolation at the end of this game and did not have success with it. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Cam Johnson tries a step-back jump shot on Max Strus and gets blocked. Strus runs out in transition, kick-ahead pass, gets fouled at the rim, makes both free throws. Now it's 111, 109. Transition defense was a huge problem for the Nets in this game. We'll get to that in a little bit. But on the next possession, it's 111 to 109. And Donovan Mitchell, who is being really aggressive with Mikal Bridges physically at the point of attack defensively, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But he gets super aggressive and jumps in between a dribble handoff with Mikal Bridges and blows it up, takes the ball away, goes the length of the floor, dunks it. Now we're tied at 111. Now this is where we get to that aggression piece, because on the next possession, with only about 20 seconds left or so, he gets overly physical again with Mikal Bridges, and this time gets called for the foul. There in the short corner on the left side, Mikal Bridges goes to the line, makes both free throws. Could have ended up being the game winner for the Nets, 113, 111. But Donovan Mitchell goes down. They run a switching scheme they run a ghost screen with Max Strus, who had hit 7 threes in the game. He comes and sets the ghost screen. Again, a ghost screen in that situation, he's not really trying to set a pick. He's just trying to confuse a switch. And so runs over like he's going to screen, but then sprints over to the top of the key as a shooter. Dorian Finney-Smith and Cam Johnson are the two wings for Brooklyn in the action. Cam Johnson goes for a hedge and recover. So what he does is he basically comes out wide to stop Donovan Mitchell from turning the corner, and then he wants to go back and recover to get back to Max Strus, except for there's a miscommunication. Dorian Finney-Smith thinks that it's a switch, so he sprints over to Max Strus. Cam Johnson on the hedge flops because Donovan Mitchell hits him a little bit, so he flops, which again, never flop at the end of a game, because if you put the refs are almost never going to call a foul unless they're certain that the foul exists, right? So Cam Johnson flops. Since he's down on the ground, since Dorian Finney-Smith thought it was a switch, Donovan Mitchell's wide open, and he hits the three. One that ended up being the game winner. Cam Thomas ends up missing a prayer on the other end in the right wing. That it was kind of unfortunate because it was the same shot that he made at the end of the first quarter with about 30 seconds left, a drifting three from about 25 feet on the right wing, but made the first one and missed the one at the end of the game. Donovan Mitchell is his point of attack defense a little bit interesting down the stretch, that really aggressive play, because at 105, 105, he gets super aggressive with Mikal Bridges and slaps like crazy from behind and kind of gets Mikal Bridges to lose control of the basketball for a second, but Mikal gets it back, and because of the reach, Donovan Mitchell took himself out of the play. Mikal Bridges goes downhill, makes a driving kick pass to Royce O'Neal, who attacks the closeout by pump faking and sidestepping and knocks down a three, right? So it was a gamble that did not pay off. Then he gambles on the DHO and gets the steal and the dunk on the other end, so that's a big play, right? But then he ends up fouling Mikal Bridges late in the game with what could have been the shot or the free throws that beat them in this game. And again, like, it's one of those things where that's why we refer to that on defense as gambling. When you're constantly lunging and reaching, you take yourself out of position. And so if you make a play, it can be great, but it can also be something that hurts you if it doesn't go right? So like, we had 3 gambles from Donovan Mitchell at the end of the game. 2 of them led to 5 points for the Nets. 1 of them led to a turnover and 2 points for the Cavs. So like, again, it kind of paid off, but like, Donovan Mitchell, that's the kind of undisciplined stuff on defense that can actually end up hurting your team in the big picture. And such a gifted athlete. He's capable of being so much better defensively than he actually is. But I feel bad talking too much shit about Donovan Mitchell on the defensive end on a game when he basically took over. That pullback dribble was ridiculous. The steal and dunk is ridiculous. The pull-up 3 to basically win the game is ridiculous. He had one of those D-Wade, like, kind of pull over the top dribble layups in the mid-fourth quarter as well. So it was a great game from Donovan Mitchell. I just thought that was an interesting kind of like theme down the stretch, was Donovan Mitchell just getting overly aggressive at the point of attack against Mikal Bridges. And for the record, Mikal Bridges is kind of a shaky ball handler. And so it might have been a little bit more of like a strategic thing, like I can get away with gambling more with Mikal than I can, against a better ball handler in that case. Max Strus was awesome. Made 7 threes in this game. A lot of them were open too. He had a little stretch there in the second quarter where he took some heat check threes, but most of them were either like kickouts and pick and roll, or kickouts and pick and roll that got rotated one more time to the wing and he knocked down the shot. And again, like, a lot of times that was what was happening with the Cavs last year. Really solid action that was resulting in a miss because they just didn't have the guys that can make the plays at the tail end of the action. And I thought Max Strus did awesome there. Brooklyn attacking him in ISO down the stretch. So like, Mikal Bridges ISO'd him down the stretch, tried to drive by him, couldn't get past him. Cam Thomas had that play where he kind of drove from the right wing. He actually drew a foul on this play, but I thought it was a bullshit call. Like, he slid his feet, stayed in front. Cam Thomas took like a drifting fall away one leg bank shot that he missed. Strus was right there the whole time. I didn't think that was a foul. And then when Cam Johnson tried to ISO him, he ended up taking a step back 3 and he blocked him and ran out the other way for 2 free throws. So I thought that was a really impressive game for Max Strus on a bunch of different levels. Again, that's the thing, is you're going to try to attack him, not as a shot to him, but it's the guy that they think is the guy that's the best athlete they can attack on that end. I would argue you're probably better off going after Darius Garland in that instance, but Max Strus held his own. I thought it was as good of a debut for a highly paid role player like that as you can find in this type of circumstance. He also had a huge basket cutting on Dorian Finney-Smith late. So on the left wing, Dorian kind of lost sight of man and ball, just face cut him right in front and made a little layup right in front of the rim. He's really going to help this team. I thought Isaac Okoro was excellent as well. Always excellent on defense, but he had 18 points, hit a couple of threes, including a huge one in the middle of the fourth quarter. It was a nice season opening performance for the Cavs. Not easy to go on the road and beat the Nets, especially with all their athleticism. On the Nets end, they had a really impressive defensive performance in the half court. They held the Cavs to just 89.4 points per 100 possessions in the half court, according to Cleaning the Glass. But they let the Cavs get out in transition on over 20% of their possessions and allowed an offensive rating of 178 on those transition possessions. The 2 biggest examples of that were the late Donovan Mitchell steal and dunk, and then the Strus blocked 3 on Cam Johnson when he got the run out for the layups. Like, again, like, it doesn't matter how good your half-court defense is if they can run on you that easily. That was the problem with the Celtics in 2022, if you guys remember. But so again, like, it was something that caused them problems throughout the game, but it beat them especially down the stretch. Cam Thomas, 7 for 12 on pull-up jump shots on his way to 36 points off the bench. I felt bad for him because he made the exact same shot he took for the game. He made that with 30 seconds left in the first quarter, just missed this one. I thought it was interesting that Brooklyn trusted him the most with the ball late in the game. Again, Spencer Dinwiddie just not quite as dynamic as a scorer as you'd like for a late game ball handler. Mikal Bridges can score the basketball, but just a little shaky as a ball handler and as a playmaker. And so it ended up being the young kid off the bench. And I thought that was an interesting kind of example of where this team is in terms of their ball handling right now. I like the way they use Ben Simmons. Again, he only had 4 points, but like, they used him in a way that made sense. He didn't close the game. They kept him on the bench in crunch time for the most part. He played a little bit in the middle of the fourth quarter. He primarily operated as a playmaker in transition. So again, defensive rebounds, just pushing the pace, applying a little bit of rim pressure and then looking around, spreading for shooters. And then they basically used him as a dribble handoff fulcrum at the top of the key. That makes sense to me. That's what he can do at a deeply impactful level at this phase in his career. He had 9 assists to just 2 turnovers and 10 rebounds. And again, when you're a player like that really struggles with half-court offense, but succeeds in the flow of the game when things are a little more loose, think like early second quarter, late first quarter, early fourth quarter, late third quarter, those stretches of the game, that's when it makes sense to have Ben Simmons in there. It's less half-court. It's more transition. It's more helter-skelter. That's where his half-court limitations don't kind of come to the surface, right? But it kind of made sense the way they used him in this game. My biggest concerns right now for the Nets are, again, transition defense and then their late game ball handling. Those are the two things that came to the surface in that game. All right, guys, that's all I have for this portion of tonight. We will be back in just a couple of hours with a breakdown of the Bucks and the Sixers. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in a little bit.